From NBC News in Washington, this is Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
Welcome again to Meet the Press. Our issues this Sunday morning: taxes and spending. Which taxes will be cut and how will we pay for them? What programs will be reduced or eliminated and who will be affected? Can the Republicans really cut taxes and still balance the budget? Our guests, 4 men, all Republicans, who will largely determine congressional tax and spending policy in 1995. The new chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Pete Domenici of New Mexico, and the new chairman of the House Budget Committee, John Kasich of Ohio. The incoming chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Bob Packwood of Oregon, and the incoming chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Bill Archer of Texas. And in our political roundtable, the author of Why Americans Hate Politics and columnist for the Washington Post, E.J. Dionne. And joining me in the question this morning, Alan Murray, Washington bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal. Before we begin our interview this morning, we want to go live to the Pentagon and talk to our correspondent there, Ed Rabel, who has the very latest on 2 U.S. airmen who've been shot down, we believe, over North Korea. Ed, what's the latest? Do we know, are the airmen in custody? Are they alive?
Tim, only the North Koreans know about that. The United States is continuing this morning to demand the immediate release of those 2 pilots. There are conflicting reports about whether they are alive, what their condition is. The North Koreans only know that. And furthermore, the North Koreans really only know whether this helicopter was shot down. There's a 2-pronged approach to trying to gain the release of the pilots. One, Congressman Bill Richardson of New Mexico happened to be in Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, arriving there just after this incident occurred. He's been meeting constantly with the North Koreans. At Panmunjom, at the DMZ, which divides North and South Korea, U.S. military officials met with the North Koreans. The North Koreans stonewalled the Americans there, saying that the Americans would find out in due course what happened to the pilots. In the meantime, the North Koreans are accusing both South Korea and the United States of staging major war exercises against the North. U.S. officials are adamant that this helicopter, which was unarmed, was not engaged in any kind of espionage against the North, but they do say it did stray into North Korean airspace, and it's unclear whether the North Koreans shot it down or it made an emergency landing, Tim.
Ed Rabel, thanks very much. If anything develops during the course of this program, please let us know. Thanks for being at your post at the Pentagon this morning. Senator Packwood, let me just ask you quickly before we begin talking about taxes. Should we go forward with any negotiations with the North Koreans about building nuclear reactors or their own development of a nuclear arms program until these airmen are released?
Tim, I hesitate only in this sense. I remember the statement I made when Gary Francis Powers was shot down, and we said, well, this was a weather plane that had strayed, and I was outrageous that the Russians shot it down. Turns out it was 1,500 miles over Russian territory taking pictures. It was a spy plane. I don't know what happened. I don't want to get burned again. Do we negotiate with them? You bet. Do we try to get them back? You bet. We finally got Gary Francis Powers back. But I'm just not going to jump until I know what happened.
Senator Domenici, should we go forward with negotiations with the North Koreans to help them build electric nuclear reactors?
Well, frankly, I believe the North Koreans sooner rather than later have to join the world. And I think we have to push them very hard. If it is as we say, then obviously they have no real excuse for holding them, and we ought to do everything within our power to make sure they understand that, including some serious suggestions about whether we're going to put a lot of billions of dollars in for nuclear reactor safety.
Until the men are returned.
Exactly. Now, Bill Richardson, representative from New Mexico, is there, and by accident he was there, and I hope that he succeeds. I hope he can get some communication going so this will work quickly. But if it doesn't, I think we have to be very tough. I don't think we can sit by and wait a long, long time. It's just another episode where they're not going to learn that they got to be members of the world.
Okay, let's turn to our subject at hand this morning, taxes and budgets. Congressman Archer, let me begin with you. You'll be the new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and I learned in civics class that that's where tax laws are initiated, in the House Ways and Means Committee. What tax cuts will be enacted by Congress this year?
Well, when you say enacted by Congress, you also have to fold in the Senate. But let me talk about the Ways and Means Committee in the House. We have a contract with America that we House Republicans signed, and we're going to keep our promises that are in that contract. We're not going to be like it's been in the past over 40 years where the American public is promised one thing and then something else happens. We're going to be a different breed.
So what tax cuts are you?
And those tax cuts are a tax credit of $500 per dependent child. They are going to be tax cuts for capital gains to create capital savings and investment to buy tools and create jobs that will pay Americans more in real earning power. We're going to have the elimination of the taxes on Social Security benefits that I believe were unwise, put in by Clinton in the last year. We're going to open up the opportunity for senior citizens to continue to work if they want to without suffering the loss of their Social Security benefits. We're going to create tax incentives for adoption. There's a great concern today about children being in loving homes, and that's blocked to a great degree by the costs of adoption. So we're going to put that in place. We're going to phase out the penalty where two single people get married and they pay more taxes just by virtue of being married, which is unfair. We're going to increase the opportunity for IRAs, and we're also going to give small businesses the opportunity to deduct $25,000 as an expense item of the purchase of their equipment. We have a very broad agenda, and I haven't spoken to all of it even yet. We're going to talk about the ability of people to accelerate health care benefits by being able to withdraw their insurance during their life if they're suffering from terminal illness. This will be a big advantage to people who have AIDS as well as to senior citizens.
Okay, that's a...
and if you want me to go through the rest of it, it's a very long list.
Let's just stop there because it's a very ambitious agenda, obviously. How much will those tax cuts cost? How much money will be lost to the Treasury?
Tim, we don't really know yet because that will come to us from the Joint Committee's estimates. The Joint Committee has not estimated any of this. And when we get down to the specifics, the actual legislative language, and that goes to the Joint Committee and we get the estimates, then we'll be able to answer that question. A lot of people have thrown out numbers today, but those numbers are not accurate because they're not official estimates.
Well, but the Joint Taxation Committee has said that the capital gains would be about $56 billion.
No, they haven't.
All right, Congressman, it will cost something for these tax cuts.
It will cost something for some.
There is no Santa Claus.
That's true. It will cost something for some of the tax cuts. The empirical data from experience on capital gains is when we've reduced capital gains rates, we get more revenue. When we raise capital gains rate, we get less revenue.
All right, well,
that's what's been shown in the marketplace.
Will you promise the American people this morning that for every dollar you cut in taxes, for every dollar of lost revenue, you will cut a dollar in spending this year?
You bet. We will cut spending first before we give any tax reductions that are accurately scored and their impact on the deficit. Or it will be part of the same package. It will not be we're going to cut taxes first and then we're going to somehow promise that we'll cut spending.
So the deficit next year will be less than the deficit this year, even with your tax cuts?
The deficit next year will not be any greater. We said we will offset every legitimately scored tax reduction with a spending cut.
And will those spending cuts have to deal with entitlements?
Some will probably deal with entitlements, but Social Security is off the table because Social Security really is not a part of the operating deficit. We don't have time to go into all of that.
Well, we will.
Well, the trust funds are very different than the operating deficit. The trust funds, for the most part, are generating more money annually than they're paying out, and the excess goes in loans to the federal Treasury. But Social Security is off the table. And Medicare Part A, I hope, will not be on the table because I would like to see that reserved for when we reform health care later on next year. But Medicare Part B, which is an entitlement that comes out of the General Treasury Fund, certainly is subject to being considered.
Senator Packwood, you've been around for 26 years. You know these numbers very, very well. Can you cut all the taxes that Congressman Archer is talking about?
Oh, can you?
Yes.
And match them with spending it. Can you? Yes.
Should we?
Yes.
Every one?
Well, you mean every spending cut or every tax cut?
Every tax cut that he talked about in the Republican contract.
I didn't understand your question. You remember the old adage about fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I remember in 1981 when President Reagan presented his budget, his tax cuts and his spending cuts. It would have led to a balance. We were projecting big surpluses in 1981, and he wanted to use those for tax cuts, and he had spending cuts. We never adopted the spending cuts. You remember 1982? And poor old Ronald Reagan, he didn't like it, but we raised taxes. But here was the promise. For every $1 in taxes, we'll cut spending $3. We never saw it. I'm not even going to consider what tax cuts we're going to do until I see spending cuts that will match them.
Could you buy into the tax cuts that Congressman Archer outlined, however?
Tim, I would almost like to go on a bigger basis, if we could, in this sense. Ask this question. Should we move from a tax code that encourages consumption to one that encourages investment and savings? And if you answer that yes, then you say, what's the best way to do it? And I would rather go on that basis than to just kind of clap your hands and do a couple magic tricks and say, there, that's it.
Well, but we seem to have the House Ways and Means going on one track and Senate Finance on another
not necessarily. Capital gains may be part of it. IRAs may be part of it. But I think there's something bigger than that. If you really want to tilt us toward investment, if you really say that investment and savings produce the machines that produce the higher paying jobs and keep us competitive, is it just capital gains and IRAs, or is there a better, bigger way to do it?
You talking about a national sales tax?
No. You're not going to get me into a national sales tax.
Well, you talking about a fat tax?
No, I'm not.
What's the name?
Well,
What's the name?
One we call it non diminuti. They used to call it the consumption-based income tax. He has a better name for it now.
USA.
USA. It is basically a gigantic incentive for savings. It is neither a VAT, value-added tax, nor a national sales tax.
It sounds like a secret Republican tax.
No. Senator Domenici and Senator Nunn have been kicking this around for 3 or 4 years.
Helen?
Senator, let me make sure I understand you. You said you're not going to you're not even going to consider what taxes to cut until you get spending cuts in place?
Oh, and we'll consider it. Will we have hearings? You bet. But I am not going to support any tax cuts that are going to widen the deficit, period. And I just don't want to see us once again send out tax cuts with a lick and a promise and a hope that the spending cuts are coming later. We somehow never quite seem to get to them.
If the deficit is that important to you, why not do deficit reduction first? Why not have a detailed plan that gets you towards balancing the budget first and then come back and do tax cuts with whatever you have left over?
Well, as a matter of, for one thing, the Republicans promised the cuts. Now, here you come to a situation where you say, do you keep your promises? Or do you say, well, that's promises, political promises are kind of like a streetcar platform. They're meant to get in on, not stand on. Do you keep your word? And do you say, we promised this, and in order to promise more things in terms of moving toward a balanced budget next, people have to believe you. And that's an important thing.
Do you think the promise was a mistake?
If you make a promise, do you keep it?
But do you think the promise was a mistake?
Well, I didn't make the promise, but if you make it, do you keep it?
Yeah. Congressman, one very big item in the contract that you left out of your list is something called the Neutral Cost Recovery Act, which would have, as I understand it, the effect of, down the road, cutting the corporate tax by as much as 10%, the corporate tax take, and cost possibly $150 billion in over 5-year periods in the future. Are you saying that that's no longer in the contract, that you're not going to do that?
No, we're going to do what's in the contract, Alan, and...
But that's a big item that you didn't mention.
We believe very, very strongly that if workers are going to have the opportunity to increase their real earnings, they have to have upgraded tools and technology. This costs money. And in order to be able to have a cost recovery mechanism, we need to take a look at refining what's under the current law. I also would like, as you know, to try to evaluate moving into the next century with the new form of taxation. You talked a little bit about that, but for the time being, as long as we have the income tax law, we're going to have to find ways where companies, businesses, both whether they be privately owned or whether they be corporation, can depreciate assets and be able to put in place the tools that are necessary to upgrade the opportunity for earning capacity. Now, that's what this proposal does. But we are also going to have to look at it realistically as to what the actual impact is going to be over the period of time so that we can create a situation where John Casey can be on a glide path to give us a program to get to a balanced budget in the year 2002, and we're going to do that.
So you may trim that back.
So when we get, exactly, we may have to trim that in such a way that when we get the official scoring from the Joint Committee that we can live with it.
Do you think a big corporate tax cut should be a part of this package?
I'll say one thing. When you mentioned 2002, and I'll come back to that. The balanced budget amendment, unless I'm wrong, is going to pass this Congress by about April. I think it's going to be ratified by the states by midsummer. And if that's true, And if we're looking at $200 to $400 billion deficits for the foreseeable future, everything we're saying on this program today and everything we've ever thought about tax cuts or spending cuts is going to have to be rethought.
Does that mean put the tax cuts off and deal with the balance?
I'm just saying everything is going to have to be rethought.
If the constitutional amendment is going to pass, let's assume that is going to be the law of the land. And let's talk this morning.
I'm assuming.
Let's talk reality.
I'm assuming it's going to be the law of the land. It passes by summer of this 95, and we have 7 years or 5 years, whatever we put in, to balance the budget. And I hope if we're looking at $200 to $400 billion deficit, we don't wait till the 6th year.
Senator Domenici, let me get you in the conversation here. You have been long considered an advocate.
I thought we were going to get the show over with before you got there.
Plenty of time for everyone.
Would have been all right with me.
We have deficits now of over $200 billion. Senator Packwood said they're going to go up to $400 billion. The national debt is $4 trillion. Yeah. All of you at the table are going to have to vote for increasing the debt ceiling this year to make it $5 trillion.
Right.
Here we are talking about tax cuts.
Right.
Is this Santa Claus gone mad?
No, not at all. Actually, what's happened is we've had a revolution in the country. That's what's happened. The people of this country have told us they want to do things differently. And for the first time, we have an opportunity to really do that. And we have Republicans leading the House and Republicans leading the Senate, and that means that we are clearly going to approach the budget of the United States differently. I believe there will be scores of programs that will either be terminated or drastically cut back. I believe when we are finished, last year's Republican package on the budget that we adopted, that we offered, 42 Republican senators voted for it. You had something similar, John. Believe it or not, we had most of these tax cuts in it. We did not have your corporate one, Alan, that you just referred to. But we had the family $500 one, we had capital gains, we had the IRAs, and we voted for it.
But Senator, that budget, the Kasich budget that was done last year, ended the decade with a deficit of $176 billion. It didn't begin to get you to zero.
Our budget got you to $99 billion by 2002. It cut the deficit in half. Now, frankly, I agree with what's been said. It's most important that we be honest and that we cut spending, not just cut taxes. The public in this last election said one way to make sure the government doesn't grow is to put more in our pockets and less in the government's pockets. And I think that's the reason for the tax situation that we've got. But essentially, we're going to do that. We're going to get the deficit under control. I can't tell you today, so if you want to ask me in a little while, I'm already telling you right now, I don't know how we get to balance. But I do know we can make a huge cut in the deficit and reduce most of these taxes we've been talking about.
Why are we talking about tax cuts if you don't know how to get the budget balance?
Well, look, the public of the United States said we want less government. Unequivocally, that's the issue, and that means you've got to cut spending. So we've got to do that. On the other hand, in order to make sure that we don't put ourselves back in a position where government's growing again, the time has come as a matter of policy to do some tax things that are necessary. I would say to you, however, that I don't like the piecemeal approach, but I'm going to be for it as it moves through. I would think we should totally do away with the current income tax law, corporate and individual, reform it in such a way that essentially all savings and investment are free of taxes. You pay on what you consume as an income tax. You make it progressive and neutral in terms of revenue, and you have a much better approach to the 21st century for our children. But if we can't get that, and Bob Packwood's talking about that eventually, maybe we can't get it. In the meantime, we've got to do some of these tax cuts because the people deserve them, business community and labor deserves them, and we'll still get the deficit
What's
down.
Eventually on the consumption tax? When would you want to do away with the income tax as we have it and replace it with the consumption tax?
Actually, you know, I'm more conservative on it, having worked on it for 2 years, than Bob Packwood, the incoming chairman of Ways and Means. Finance. He thinks the time might be ripe.
Congressman Archer, are you for that right now? Give it a shot?
I'm for getting the debate started. Realistically, we know that major tax reform, particularly considering replacing the income tax, is going to take time. The American public's going to have to understand it. There's going to have to be input. There's going to have to be a lot of consideration. But we should do it as soon as we can.
Congressman Kasich, all the economists that I've read over the last couple of days are saying as follows. You have a situation where if you pass a tax cut now to stimulate the economy, The Federal Reserve is already raising interest rates to slow down the growth of the economy, and you are going to have a tax policy at war with the fiscal policy, and that the amount of money that people will pay in higher interest rates will be more than they'll get from any small tax cut. How do you respond?
Well, Tim, first of all, look, the reason why we have the family tax credit is we think that the American family, building block of the country, ought to get a little bit of the reward from downsizing government. So we will pay for the family tax relief program by cutting spending. Secondly, the capital gains reduction, we have the highest capital gains tax of any major industrial country in the world, and Alan Greenspan came before a committee and said if we index capital gains in the 80s, we'd have a stronger economy. It essentially would have paid for itself because it would expand the private infrastructure of this country to provide for what they want in Buffalo, which is faster economic growth without inflation. We don't expect the impact of the capital gains, however, to really bite in the economy, to help the economy, for at least a year. And economists are saying that they're concerned about what the growth rate will be in a year. But let me suggest this to you. What we intend to do is to cut spending first. And let me tell you what the procedure is going to be. In January, and this is the first time that we've really spelled this out clearly, in January, I'm going to bring to the floor a revised budget resolution. That revised budget resolution will set into play the efforts by the Ways and Means Committee and the other authorizing committees to do reconciliation. We will also lower the budget caps, which will force Bob Livingston and the appropriators to then make appropriate spending reductions. We will take the savings by cutting spending first, and we're going to put them in a bank. So nobody across this country, nobody on Main Street, no one on Wall Street is going to think that what we're going to do is we're going to give out the goodies without cutting government first. We are then, whenever we pass any of these incentives, like the family tax relief program, we'll draw down the bank. We will draw down the savings account. What's the most important thing? We're responding to what Senator Packwood said. We are not going to say, we're going to give you the goodies today and we'll pay for them tomorrow. We're going to pay for them up front and we're going to cut spending first. And everything is on the table except for Social Security.
But that doesn't reduce the budget deficit. That merely pays for the tax cuts.
There are going to be two forces at work. The first thing we're going to do is something that politicians never did in this town. We're going to keep our word. I know people find that hard to believe, but we made a promise. We're going to keep our promise. We will provide the spending savings. You know, I've already outlined them in the menu list. We already have 2 or 3 budgets. And then when that is done, Alan, at the same time, we're going to move on the glide path to zero. It is not inconsistent to provide incentives for investment, like the capital gains tax. That's a growth factor. That helps us to get to zero. This is not just cutting, it's growing and cutting the size of government.
Let me ask you, Congressman Archer, one more question about that, because Treasury Secretary Benson said in his press conference the other day that 54%, by his calculation, 54% of the benefits of the tax cuts in the contract with America go to people with 6-figure incomes, people making more than $100,000 a year. Those aren't the people who've been getting squeezed by this economy. Is that first of all, is that figure right? But second, is that the way you want your tax cuts to be tilted?
Well, there are 2 factors here, Alan. Number one, where's the burden from the revenue going to come from? On the higher income people, because they have the capital savings. So as you unlock these assets and more taxes come in from capital gains because of the lower rate, the higher income people are going to be paying a bigger part of the cost of federal government, number one. Number two, if we want capital investment, we want to buy tools and technology to permit workers to have a higher real earning power. It's going to have to come wherever the savings are. If we keep taking savings away from people who have them today, we reduce the ability domestically to provide the tools and the technology to really do what the president says he wants to do, which is put higher real earnings in the pocket of the workers of this country. That's the issue that we need to talk about.
The initial impact is 54% of the benefits to 5%
no,
of the
the benefit goes...
What is your point?
My question is that the message you want the nation to take away from this? The president has said we should focus on the people.
You about to do a break?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I asked the Joint Tax Committee, which is the professional group that advises all career people, to tell me how much money we could raise if we had a 100% rate of taxation on incomes over $100,000. And they said, well, if you have a 100% rate, probably will have an economic downturn and will get less money. If you were to cut that rate, Alan, from 100% to 90%, you know what somebody would say? Only the rich are benefiting. We would collect more money, but there'd be some who would oppose it because we're getting it from the rich.
We do have to take a break, but let me just ask you very quickly before we leave this section. President Clinton's speech to the nation on Thursday night, laid out his middle-class tax cut plan. Does it have a chance of passing, Congressman Archer?
Well, his plan is going to be considered in our committee when we hold our hearings. He came late to the dance, but he's on the dance floor, and we welcome that.
Senator Packard?
There's going to be tax cuts.
And will Clinton's proposals with education be part of it?
When we say middle-class tax cuts, by the time we end, I think everybody's going to claim credit unless they don't like it, in which case they'll say it's an orphan and I had nothing to do with it.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of our discussion with Domenici, Kasich, Packwood, and Archer, how to balance the budget.
Meet the Press is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM. Supermarket to the world.
Every second of every day, there are 3 new mouths in this world to feed. Hundreds of millions more by the year 2000. And the majority of them will be born in countries where malnutrition is already reaching alarming proportions. Right now, the world has the food and the resources to conquer hunger. But it won't happen as long as we continue to look the other way. ADM, supermarket to the world.
It's here!
This is the huge new GE Profile 30 refrigerator. And since it's the largest refrigerator of its kind, you may wonder how it will fit in your kitchen. But while smart space designs like quick space shelves, huge freezer baskets, and deep door bins give you so much more space inside, you'll be astonished to find that it doesn't take up an inch more space outside. The new GE Profile 30. It fits because it's only bigger on the inside.
Let's figure out who this new computer is really for. You or them? All right, this is for you, this is for them, you, them, you, them, probably you and them, you if you get to the computer before they do, definitely you, them mostly, you sometimes, everybody really. If I talk about how it's built and backed and all that stuff, that won't help because that's good for both of you. Okay, how is this? It's for everybody, but it lives in your room. You'll work it out.
Buy hamburger, cook it up, and you'll discover you have a whole lot of something you don't even want. Try Harvest Burgers from who else? Green Giant. And get the flavor without all the fat. They're all vegetable, with far less fat than hamburger, no cholesterol, and lots of taste. New Harvest Burgers from Green Giant. Everything you want from a burger, without everything you don't.
We're back on Meet the Press talking about your taxes and your federal government's budget. We talked to a lot of Americans in our Wall Street Journal NBC News poll, gentlemen, about what they wanted. Take a look at the chart right there. What's the more important priority? Reducing the deficit, 58%. Reduces taxes, 35%. And we asked our next question. Are you in favor of a balanced budget amendment? Yes, 68 to 19. The next question. Should we cut entitlement programs to reduce deficit? That's the generic word entitlement. By all means, 59 to 32. Then we asked, balanced budget amendment with cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, no, 61-33. Suddenly entitlements became real, Senator Domenici. You're a man of good Italian stock. Luca Testi, a truth teller in this area.
We're in-law related. You know, your wife's from Luca.
A truth teller in this area. On December 2nd, you spoke to the House GOP leadership, Senate GOP leadership. I have the document right here.
When was that?
December 2nd. You presented a chart show, and you said to them very candidly, that if you want to balance the budget by the year 2002, and you take Social Security and defense off the table, which the Republicans largely have, you will have to find...
The president took it off, not us.
I'm sorry?
President's taking it off, too.
So, not defense, but Social Security and defense,
you're right.
We'll leave them alone.
Right.
You will have to find $1.1 trillion in less government spending over the next 7 years. Tell us, can you achieve or find $1.1 trillion, arrive at a balanced budget without limiting the growth in Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, farm benefits.
First, let me comment on one thing you raised a while ago. You made it economically inappropriate for us to cut taxes now by saying most economists are suggesting that we don't need to stimulate the economy. What you forgot in that analysis is that if we cut spending an equal amount, then those economists have no concern about the tax cuts because that's a wash.
Fair point.
All right, if we cut the budget even more so, we're helping Mr. Greenspan so he won't have to raise interest rates.
All four of you have agreed to cut spending to pay for your tax
Right.
cuts. Now, where do you find the $1.1 trillion in less government spending over the next 7 years to balance the budget?
Okay.
You must reduce the growth of Medicare, Medicaid, veterans, and farm subsidies. Can't we tell the truth to the American people?
I think it's fair to say that the new partnership with the Republican governors working together, that there are going to be a lot of things we did not do before that we're going to do. First of all, we're going to get rid of some departments of the government, but that's going to be an exercise in saving money, not just consolidating. I would not be surprised that we recommend at least 2 or 3 of the major departments of our government be eliminated. Some people say energy, some people say HUD. I don't think energy is the right one, but you understand where I come from in my state. But I think there are a number of them that we ought to get rid of. In fact, the president's left commerce off the table, and frankly, I don't know why commerce couldn't be dramatically reduced.
But
That's
Senator,
hundreds of
but
millions.
Senator, these departments, not where the money is.
Well, let me finish.
Why can't we tell the truth to the middle class?
Well,
Wait a minute, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. Look, there's some things we are doing now that we're not even going to be able to do. They're talking about, let's work with the states. We're going to have to give them back some programs and not do them. But we cannot get there. We cannot get there. Well, let me make another one for you. We've got $350 billion worth of deficit reduction for starters in last year's Republican budget. We did have Medicaid reform. And you understand that. That doesn't mean it's cut. It means we give the programs more flexibility for less money. There has to be welfare reform, and eventually, over time, it will save $25 to $30 billion. Clearly, all of the health care programs, including Medicare, the president has about $100 billion in Medicare savings to start with. And we have to look at that and try to find a better way to save money. All entitlements except Social Security are going to have to be looked at. There's no question, no use deceiving anyone. Can we put together a balanced budget in the next 12 months to do this over 7 or 8 years? I don't know. But I believe we can give the American people a giant installment. As much as 50 to 75% of that, we can put in a 5-year budget resolution and 5-year projections after it. I believe so.
Senator Packard, let me just follow up on that, because back in May of '93, you said on this program, we're going to have to deal with entitlements.
That's correct.
Can we say to the American people, folks, listen, you could eliminate all welfare, eliminate all foreign aid, go after waste, fraud, and abuse. You could close down the entire United States government. And if you let Social Security, Medicare, and defense grow at the levels they're growing now, you would still not have a balanced budget. Isn't that a true statement?
Well, it isn't quite true, because you asked, how can you do it? We have 410 entitlement programs in this country. The bottom 400 cost about $50 billion a year. The top 4, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and then other government retirement, plus interest, are $900 billion. And if you say a fair portion of the $900 billion is off the table, then you've got to get your money someplace else. Now, can you get it? Yes. Would it be draconian? Yes. If we were to go back to what the federal government did 40 years ago, we would get out of the following business of money we give to the states: Medicaid, health and welfare, housing, transportation, education, and nutrition. We didn't do that 40 years ago, and that would save about $200 billion a year.
But let me just finish up, Alan, and then I'll turn it over to you. If you look at these numbers, and you've all, Senator Domenici, you've put them on the table, Senator Packwood, Congressman Archer, Congressman Kasich, if you want to balance the budget, and you take Social Security and defense off the table, and you want to have your tax cuts, every other existing program, Medicare on down, will have to be reduced in their growth by 30%. Let me just finish. If you take Medicare off the table, Congressman Archer, every other program, using Senator Domenici and Senator Packwood's numbers,
You're right.
would have to be reduced by 40%. Do you have the political will, and will you tell the American people today that in order to pay for the tax cuts and pay for the balanced budget, I am going to reduce the growth of Medicare, Medicaid, and other entitlements by 40%?
Tim, in reality, that premise is not accurate. Social Security, which is a separate trust fund, is not contributing to the deficit, nor will it contribute to the deficit during the rest of this century.
Quite the opposite.
And-
We're using Social Security to help pay off the debt.
Precisely. So when you say you're leaving Social Security off the table, therefore how can you do it? Social Security is actually masking a bigger part of the operating deficit. The trust funds that are self-contained are generating money every year that is in excess of what they're paying out.
But Congressman, Senator Packwood and Senator Domenici have said, listen, you're right. If we're going to have tax cuts and a balanced budget, someone's going to have to pay for it. Who's the Santa Claus
But
here?
let's take a new look at the budget, and that is the operating budget, which has got to be balanced by the year 2002. And so it doesn't hurt to put Social Security off.
Fine. Medicare?
We actually help balancing it by putting Social Security off. Medicare Part A is going to have to be funded within its own structure. Medicare Part B that comes out of the General Treasury is a different thing. But we've got to look at those items that come out of the General
people
Treasury.
watching this, A, B is a lot of gobbledygook. I have to tell you.
I
The
agree.
simple fact is, if you're going to have a balanced budget and tax cuts, someone's going to have to pay. You're going to have to reduce government spending, non-Social Security government spending, by about 40%.
But let's be honest with the American public as to where the deficit is really coming from. And when you throw in Social Security and you throw in the big chunk of hospital part of medical care, you distort a picture and leave the wrong impression with the American public.
Let me try something with you. Because these numbers are going to, I mean, people in Westerville don't, I mean, these numbers are giant. They're hard to deal with. We want to cut, Tim, about 1.2 billion out of a pot of $13.2 trillion. And to get to a balanced budget...
1.1 trillion.
Yeah, 1.1 trillion out of 13.2 trillion. I mean, that's incredible. The pot is so huge. And let me suggest, to get to a balanced budget, instead of spending 13.2 trillion, we'll be spending $11.8 trillion. Now, to get to zero over 7 years, the way you explain it, it makes it appear as though government spending is going to be on a glide path down. In fact, to get to a balanced budget over 7 years, government will actually slightly increase.
I've been very careful.
Now,
I've been talking about limiting the growth.
Of course the growth
So let me
of these...
just to tie this up and let Alan get in here. You will promise the American people this morning that the U.S. government will spend $1.1 trillion less 7 years from now than we had planned to.
That's correct.
Okay, Alan?
I want to make sure I understand what it is we're going to do first. Are you saying that you are going to put out a budget resolution that will do 50 to 75% of what you need to do to get on a path to a balanced budget and pay for tax cuts all at the same time early next year?
I'm saying that's the minimum we'll do.
Okay.
Yes, and that can be done. We have a model for it. So we're not talking pie in the sky. We're very close to that in the Republican package from last year, either John's in the House or ours.
And you're going to do the same thing, not only pay for these tax cuts, which could cost $200 billion over the next 5 years, but also do 50 to 75% or more of what you need to do.
Let me be very clear.
Up front.
We are going to pay for the contract. Part of the contract, we believe, is growth-oriented that grows this economy. But we are going to cut spending first. And then, Alan, we're going to quickly wheel, and we are going to put every single program of this federal government, save Social Security, under the microscope, including defense. And
first budget.
Including Medicare.
Look, what we want to do with the entitlement programs is to figure out systemic ways of improving it. Front page of the New York Times today talks about all the revolution that's going on in the private sector. What's the bottom line in the story? People get better health care for lower costs. Just because we want to change the program doesn't mean necessarily, Tim, that people are going to have a worse situation. Take Medicaid. Medicaid, we've suggested that Medicaid recipients go into managed care. It is a far more rational, far more sensible way for people to get care. They shouldn't run in the emergency room for something where they ought to see a primary care doctor. That saves us money. Does that mean worse for people? Of course not. It means a more rational system.
Congressman, to my knowledge, you and Congressman Archer have both had one chance in the past to vote for the kind of budget you're talking about. Your colleague, Republican Jerry Solomon, in March of this year, proposed a budget that got you to balance. It didn't raise taxes. It didn't cut Social Security, and both of you voted against it.
Let me answer that. Congressman Solomon did a good job, but he didn't have the staff nor the time to put together the well-thought-out policies that would get us to zero. My goal all along, in the first year, we cut spending first, and we had, Alan, the same amount of deficit reduction without one dime of taxes that the president did with taxes. Last year, our goal has been simply this, to show that we could reduce the deficit more than the president
that's not enough.
Our goal has changed, Alan. Our goal now is to get to zero over 7 years, a different goal, and it's going to require far more systemic changes.
Is it fair to say that if we want the tax cuts that are in the Republican contract, and we want to balance the budget by the year 2000, that non-Social Security, non-defense spending will have to be 30% less growth than we had planned?
No, because that's a wild projection. There's no question that all these entitlements, the growth in them is going to be slowed. But to throw out a wild number of 40% is wrong because...
I said 30% that had been projected by both Democrats and Republicans. Senator Packard, let me try you then. Can you look the American people in the eye and say this morning, listen, folks, if you want tax cuts and you want a balanced budget, there is going to be a lot fewer programs coming out of Washington, including less money than we had planned on spending in Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, and so forth?
Absolutely, and you phrase it just right. Less than we had planned on spending.
Will you help the president in his work of dealing with the deficit by giving him a line item veto, Congressman Archer?
Absolutely, that's my bill.
Absolutely.
Everyone?
Absolutely. We'll report it out.
Not a temporary line item veto, a permanent line item veto for the
president. I
president.
want to do it in the Constitution. That's my proposal.
Let me raise one other thing.
On my score, I want to say maybe, since we don't know how it'll work, maybe we would do it for 4 years or 6 years or something, because if we do it permanently, then presidents have to sign anything where we try to get rid of it. And maybe I'd be more for 4 to 6 years, see how it works, see if the presidents abuse their discretion.
We're thrilled to give the president the ability to cut the pork out of the budget. The American people want the pork cut out of the budget, and darn it, he ought to stand up to the people that keep loading this thing up with pork. That's what they want to have happen first, and that's why they favor the line item veto, and we're going to work with this president. We're glad he's buying on to our agenda.
One last thing that affects a lot of Americans. Congressman Archer, are you in favor of raising the minimum wage?
The minimum wage is not before my committee, but the minimum wage is a question of whether you have productivity or not. And we've got to think more in terms of productivity in order to justify pay scales in this country. If it is an artificial thing, a lot of studies show it will cost jobs.
So you're against raising minimum wage at this time?
If it's going to cost jobs, yes.
Well,
and that's what the economic studies show, that it would cost jobs.
Senator Packwood?
Haven't made up my mind.
Congressman Kasich?
That's not part of our agenda right now. It's a contract for America and then moving to a balanced budget. We're not going to put more on the plate and lose our focus in terms of keeping our word and carrying out our programs.
So you're against raising the minimum wage?
We're not talking about it, Tim. It is not part of our agenda right now. We have only so many, it's like a great football team. You know what your game plan is, you stick to it. You don't add a bunch of things in there in the middle of the game. We'll get that
Senator
done and then we'll...
Minimum wage?
I'm not for it, but let me tell you, one of the problems we've got is with a growing economy and prosperity, we still have a problem of getting more people into that prosperity mode where they're earning more money. If I thought the minimum wage would really do that, I'd be for it. I don't think it does.
Senator Domenici, Congressman Kasich, Senator Packwood, Congressman Archer, thank you all. We'll be watching you all very carefully in the months and years ahead. Thanks for joining us this morning. And in a moment, have a Merry Christmas, by the way, everybody. All you and your families.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
To you, this may be just a bushel of corn. But to us at the Archer Daniels Midland Company, it's enough pure golden corn oil to make 2 pounds of margarine. It's also enough protein meal to raise 3 chickens. We even capture the surplus heat generated during processing and use it to accelerate the hydroponic growth of fresh vegetables. From what's left, we distill 2.5 gallons of ethanol, used to make cleaner burning high-octane gasoline to help improve the environment. So you see, we get both food and fuel from each bushel of corn. One more reason why ADM is known as Supermarket to the World.
More of Meet the Press after this brief news update.
Good morning. North Korea has accused the U.S. and South Korea of conducting a major military exercise near its border. American officials call the report propaganda. Meantime, 2 American soldiers whose helicopter went down in North Korea remain under questioning. The Pentagon and State Department are using diplomatic channels to free the men. North Korea says it will soon provide details on the 2 pilots. No word on their condition. The Secret Service is widening its review of White House security to include yesterday morning's round of gunfire. A search of the grounds uncovered 4 bullets. One broke through a window of the state dining room. Police believe the shots were fired across the street by a single handgun. The incident is not believed to be a direct attack on the White House. Former President Jimmy Carter is trying his hand at diplomacy in the former Yugoslavia in an attempt to bring peace to Bosnia. He arrived earlier today in the region and will visit the war-torn city of Sarajevo. He wants to get the Serb and the Muslims to resume peace talks. Meanwhile, the Serbs allowed Sarajevo's airport to reopen to United Nations planes. Russian aircraft have launched an attack against a breakaway republic. They hit what they call strategic military targets in a breakaway republic. The battle began soon after Moscow's deadline for surrender passed. But local officials in the Muslim region expected the attack and have urged civilians to get ready for it. And Pope John Paul has been chosen as Time magazine's Man of the Year. The magazine says he was chosen for forcefully setting forth his vision for the good life and urging the entire world to follow it. The publication has picked a Man of the Year every year since 1927. Previous honorees have included Charles Lindbergh and Nelson Mandela. And that's the news on this Sunday morning. Now back to Washington and Tim Russert with Meet the Press.
White men in America are angry at Bill Clinton and the Democrats. They voted Republican 2-1 in the last election. Why? We'll talk more about that after the station break.
All this week on Today, music of the Christmas season from Mel Torme, Tony Bennett, Aaron Neville, Judy Collins, and Lou Rawls. Hear what a difference Today makes this week.
Nearly 30 million Americans can't hear this, but there's hope and help for those you know, and also for you. What is it? Get close. Get answers on NBC Nightly News Monday.
The 7-Up Winter Wonderland presented by Les Schwab Tire Centers is open every evening and all major holidays, tonight through January 1st at Portland International Raceway.
If you have a gardener on your gift list, it doesn't matter if they're a beginner or advanced. You can find a lot of really nice gift ideas at a garden center, starting with a nice basket of poinsettias. Or how about a really nice galvanized watering can, especially one with a wide opening so you can mix fertilizer easily. Or how about one of these little gnomes or critters for your deck? Or buy a tote and fill it with things they can use, like a nice pair of leather gloves, a gardening apron, or a pruner is always appreciated. You could buy a nice ceramic pot with a gardening book, or Native American wildflowers in a can. There's terrariums and bird houses, or indoor projects like amaryllis or bulb kits, which are also great for mailing. This tabletop fountain is a unique idea, and electric pole pruners always come in handy. So if you're out of time and out of ideas for Christmas, stop by a garden center. I'm Mike Freeman. See you next time on The Northwest Gardener.
KGW-TV can also be seen on these translators.
Welcome back to Meet the Press. With us now, Washington Post columnist E.J. Dionne. E.J., welcome. You wrote a terrific book, Why Americans Hate Politics, a variation on the theme. Why do white men seem now to hate the Democratic Party?
I think the first thing is that white men, Democrats have had a problem with white men at least since Ronald Reagan, and you've had this gender gap now for at least 14, 15 years. It got much worse in this election, partly because it got a little better in '92. Clinton and the Democrats had done a better job of pulling them back in. I think there are several things going on. It's not just the things we talk about a lot, affirmative action, people being concerned about gay rights, guns, and a desire to get the government out of that business. I think that Secretary Rice was onto something when he said that an awful lot of people belong to what he called the anxious class, and there are a lot of middle-income white men and also a lot of middle-income white women who think that their standard of living has declined, that the government does stuff for everybody else except them. Clinton was going to try to solve that by being their president, and that's the guy, he ran on that, on being the president of the forgotten middle class. Those are those people. He hasn't convinced them, and so they had this huge loss this year, I think, out of disappointment from that.
Ellen?
Well, you know, he hasn't convinced them, but it is interesting. I mean, I think the great fault line in our society right now is not a fault line of race or gender. It's the fault line between the earnings of people who have a college education and those who don't. And by proposing to allow people to deduct college tuition, I think the president may be onto something that's very appealing. I don't think that one will be turned away quickly by Congress.
Dennis Farney, in your paper, Wall Street Journal, wrote a brilliant article analyzing this whole phenomenon. And as you read through it, the division is deep. White men thinking that they have been passed over in jobs because of affirmative action programs. Their wives have to go out and work, which brings into their mind their whole question of head of the household and their own dignity and pride, whether that's misdirected or not. Whether or not the gays in the military issue. Can the Democratic Party ever again appeal to those kinds of middle-income angry voters, Alan?
I'd be curious to know what EJ thinks on this, but I mean, it seems to me that those people don't like the government giving money to the poor, but I'm not sure they're going to be any more attracted to the Republicans giving tax breaks to the well-to-do. I mean, you're talking about kind of blue-collar, working-class people here. They're not ideological, and they may react as strongly to some of the things that the Republicans are talking about as they did to President Clinton.
Will they be permanently angry because of their situation in life, EJ?
Well, I think that unless this is a long-term thing that we're going to have to deal with, because I think Alan is absolutely right. You're seeing this yawning gap between people who go to college, people who don't. And that's all kinds of people who go to college, people in our business, people in business, people who are lawyers and all that sort of thing. You've got this gap. If we don't act to increase the standard of living of those people, give them some sense that they're going to grow again, as we did from World War II till about the mid-'70s, you're going to have this anger out there for a long time. I think that's why President Clinton decided, after not doing it the first time, that he'd better do some kind of middle-income tax cut, because he wanted to get some cash to these people.
And I believe it is the very folks we're mentioning, of many of whom live in Buffalo, New York, I might add, will be the foundation of a third party in '96. We have to take a quick break.
Meet the Press is sponsored by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
What's happening? The world of teenage fashion is hard to keep up with.
What's happening? Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
What's happening today might not be happening tomorrow.
What's happening?
And what's happening here might not be happening there.
What's happening? Dosteru.
So how do companies like Nike, Benetton, or Lee Jeans keep up with what's happening with kids all over the world? Very simple. These companies rely on GE Information Services, an unparalleled electronic commerce service backed by a worldwide GE support staff. If tastes change in LA, GE lets Lee Jeans know as it happens. If a design takes off in New York, Nike can alert Tokyo instantly. In Paris, if red's out, blue's in. Benetton knows immediately. With GE's worldwide information network, these companies, as well as 25,000 other companies around the world, can be sure their customers always get what they want, when they want it. Because in the global marketplace, the only way to stay on top is to always know
What's happening?
The forecast called for a calm, quiet meeting, but a tempest rages instead. It's often the case in today's international business climate, which is why we've prepared a place high above it all, with worldly comforts that refresh, restore, and renew. United Airlines, the calm before and after the storm. Come fly the airline that's uniting the world. Come fly our friendly skies.
With ITT Financial Resources, ITT's automotive division developed traction control, engineered advanced wiper systems, and pioneered anti-lock brakes. And we plan to invest $2.7 billion in the next 5 years to make cars even safer. If you've never thought about who makes the parts in your car, maybe it's time you did. ITT.
EJ, a thesis. What if Bill Clinton had gone on TV Thursday and spoke to that Ralph Cramden generation, I call him, what about me? And said, folks, listen, I know you think the government has screwed you. We can't afford a tax cut. We don't have the money. I'm going to cut. I'm going to truly balance this budget, and you'll save more without interest rates going up. But believe me, there's no free lunch. There is no Santa Claus. What would the reaction been?
I think President Clinton is now in a situation where if he had done that, people would have said, he didn't get it. He didn't understand the election returns, that people think that they should get something back. On the other hand, he did what he did, and people said exactly what you said just now, that he doesn't like principles, that he rolls with the election returns. I think if he doesn't get out of that box where people keep saying that about him, that is his fundamental problem. But I do think what he needed to do and needs to do more of is say, I am going to draw some lines. If he doesn't draw some lines, people will start giving up.
That's another quick break right after this message.
Ever wonder what happens to your initial investment when you buy certain mutual funds through a broker and pay front-end fees? Well, by the time they charge you sales loads and account fees, it's actually costing you hundreds of dollars before you start. Now there's a better way. At Charles Schwab, you can choose from over 250 well-known no-load mutual funds with proven track records.
You pay no loads and no transaction fees.
So if you want all of your money to work for you,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
This new GE compact fluorescent bulb gives you soft, warm light. Take the ball, Jamie. It's an energy-efficient bulb that lasts year after year.
Hit the ball, Jamie.
Up to 9,000 hours longer than an ordinary bulb.
Outside with the ball, Jamie.
So it won't need to be changed for about 7 years.
Hey, Jamie, how many grown-ups does it take to change a light bulb? Change a light bulb? Why would anybody need to change a light bulb?
The revolutionary GE compact fluorescent bulb.
E.J. Dionne and Ellen Murray, thank you both. Start your day tomorrow on the Today program. Tomorrow night on the NBC Night News with Tom Brokaw. That's all for today. We'll be back next week. A special edition of Meet the Press on Christmas Day. See you then. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
The great masters. They defined civilization in Europe for centuries. Now we're defining civilization on the way there. United Airlines' renowned international service to 15 cities all across Europe. Come fly the airline that's uniting the world. Come fly our friendly skies.
It's 3 a.m., and you've got to get the year's most important contract to your company's biggest client overseas. And guess what? The fax just won't go through. What are your options? Well, now there's a new option. Call 1-800-THROUGH-FAX, and AT&T's International Fax Service Center will help you solve the problem. Only AT&T guarantees to get your international fax there. No matter what it takes. AT&T for the life of your business.
Oh, Ken, you're all grown up and graduated.
Yes, ma'am. Would you excuse us, please?
Oh.
Ken, I've got just one word for you.
Uh-huh.
Plastics.
Exactly what do you mean, sir?
Plastics, Ken. Great opportunity. Remember it. One word, Ken. Aggregates.
Sir?
Sand, gravel. Old as the planet, Ken.
I remember one thing, Ken.
Bricks.
Bricks.
Asphalt.
Do you ever think about lumber, Ken?
One word, Ken. Coal. It's power, Ken.
One word, Ken. Handsome.
Mrs. Parkinson, are you trying to seduce me?
I'm trying to teach you about the basics, Ken.
Meet the Press has been sponsored by Hanson, just your basic $15 billion company.
NBC News, now more than ever.
Food stamp fraud. You won't believe how much it's costing you. See how the scam works.